The Kremlin has called for talks with the United States on a nuclear treaty extension. The START nuclear arms treaty is an agreement between the two sides to reduce and limit strategic offensive arms. Now, the treaty is slated to end in February 2026. Moscow says the agreement is pivotal for global security and that Russia's military operation in Ukraine was no reason to avoid its discussion. A Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, says both countries are currently at a very hot point of confrontation. The two countries have not had any dialogue since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Stuart Smith has more from Moscow.
The treaty, as it exists now, allows Russia and the US on-site inspections of each other's nuclear arsenal and limits the number of deployed nuclear warheads to 1,550. It also placed limits on the number of nuclear-capable bombers, submarine-launched missiles and intercontinental missiles. When Joe Biden extended the treaty 2 days before it was due to expire in February 2021, he said the 5-year extension would buy time and space to pursue new arms control agreements. Earlier this month, the US said it would seek not only to keep the treaty beyond 2026, but also add new types of shorter-range missiles that Russia is developing, because such shorter-range missiles are more likely to be used. Mutual inspections were halted due to the COVID-19 pandemic and haven't resumed since, but the required data and notifications are still exchanged as per the agreement, according to the Russian Foreign Ministry. Stuart Smith, CNA, Moscow.
For the US perspective, Nick Harper joins us live now. Nick, how much of a surprise is it that the Kremlin is asking for talks on the nuclear arms reduction treaty now?
Well, Dawn, in some respects, it does seem quite incredible that they are asking now, in the middle of a war with Ukraine, for dialogue with the United States. However, we are seeing this very much as something that the United States is likely to want to push ahead with. They've already signalled that in the past. And in many ways, a nuclear agreement at this time is something that both sides would welcome. However, it's trying to get there, which will be the difficult thing. We have seen relations fall away between the US and Russia in the last few months since the war with Ukraine began at the end of February. When this agreement was put in place in 2010, relations between the two sides were much warmer. Now they're at really their lowest point in decades. So trying to bring the two sides together will be extremely difficult, even though it seems that they want to try and achieve that. And there is that fear that this nuclear arms agreement could potentially be a casualty of the war in Ukraine.
Well, as strained as the relations between Washington and Moscow are, Nick, these two haven't been in communication since the start of Russia's invasion. Is there an indication that the Biden administration is going to be open to talks with Russia?
Well, that lack of communication will certainly make it very, very hard. I mean, they're not on speaking terms as it is at the moment. To try and get something in place like a new extension of this nuclear arms agreement will be tough. However, the Biden administration has signalled that they are open to it. They've spoken about it in the course of the last month, saying not only would they want to extend that deadline, which expires in 2026, but they would also want to put some new agreements in place, potentially adding some shorter range missiles to the agreement that stands with Russia. Now, the United States is certainly open to it. One sticking point, though, of course, may be those on-site inspections. The treaty, as it stands, allows both sides to go into the facilities of the other to inspect those nuclear warheads. Now, they've been on pause for several years because of the pandemic. Restarting those inspections will be very, very difficult, considering those strained relations between the United States and Russia. But Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, says that extending this agreement would be good for all countries, not just the US or Russia. It would be good for world peace. And I'm sure that the Biden administration would agree with it. Now, it becomes the difficult part of trying to get the two sides together while we have the backdrop of the war in Ukraine carrying on.
Nick, thank you for that. Nick Harper in Washington, D.C.